Hello all, welcome back to another video from Let's DevOps. In today's video, we are going to understand, learn and explore Docker. This video is structured in such a way that you know all key elements about Docker, the commands that will help you get started and give you a basic understanding of how you can start playing and exploring Docker. So without wasting much time, let's get started. Uh, the first question is, if you want to try this on your local environment, on your personal laptop, how do I get Docker installed? And more so, if I have a Windows machine or a Mac machine, how do I get Docker installed? There is one option called as Docker Desktop that you can use, but then I believe it has become enterprise now, which means you need to pay and then get the software. If you can't do that, then there are multiple open source ways that you can do to have Docker installed on your machine. That's how I have done as well. Uh, in one of our previous videos, you can see that I installed Ubuntu on my local machine. So I have a Linux environment. And once I have this Linux environment on my Windows machine, then it's pretty easy to get Docker installed. To do that, you can just type install Docker on Ubuntu and it will take you to the official Docker page, which will help you with the steps that you need to execute on your Ubuntu terminal to get Docker installed. I'm not going to run through it. It's pretty straightforward. You just have to copy and paste it and things will work clean. Once Docker is installed, you can just do a Docker images to see if the Docker command is working and if Docker is installed clean. Uh, and this is how you see that confirm that Docker is installed. Right. Now, I'm sure that you all know that you need something called as a Dockerfile to write down the steps to create an image. Now, I'm not going to make it very basic as what a container is, what an image is, what a pod is. We are only going to focus on how to get started with Docker. So, uh, very, very high overview. You need something called as a Dockerfile to write down few steps and to package an application as an image. And once you have the image, you can deploy the image on a bare metal machine or on a cloud environment for the application to be deployed in that environment. So what do we have? Now, I said we need a Docker file. So here is my sample Docker file. Let's quickly run through it to see what steps we have. And then we can go ahead and create an image, try to deploy it, see the application on the browser, and also we are going to see a lot of Docker commands as a part of this demo so that it helps you to get started with the get used to the basic Docker commands that you need for your day-to-day work. Right. Dockerfile. Every Dockerfile needs to start with something called as a from. You need a base image on top of which you can add layers, add application files, configurations, whatnot. But to start with, every Docker file has to start with a from base image. Now this is going to be an Nginx application. We are going to build an Nginx application and deploy it onto the environment, the Ubuntu environment. So I start with from and then I use a Docker image. Now Nginx itself have their official images. So I'm going to use the official Nginx image. If you see here, it corresponds to docker.io. There are multiple registries available in the market. Docker, GCR, Quay, Red Hat, and much more. Docker, as you know, is DockerHub or DockerIO, as you know, is an open source registry. So anyone who wants to get started with Docker and start using registries can use DockerHub. And in fact, we are also going to use that in today's demo to try and push this image that we built today into a DockerHub registry. So we want to pull an Nginx image, the official Nginx image from Docker registry. And then second line, we want to expose it into port 8080. You know, there is this welcome page that you get on Nginx, and we want that to get hosted on the local port 8080. To do that, there are a few configurations that we need to set because it's Nginx and there are some configuration files we need to put in place. To do that, firstly, we use a run command and we uh, make a few folders read write. We set the change mod permissions and then give read write permission access to few folders within the container. Once we do that, we want to comment out a block of code from the nginx conf. So the container inside will have a path etc nginx followed by nginx.conf. There is a conf file sitting in this location. And in this conf file, we want to replace the user block with the hash user block, which means we want to basically comment out the user. So that also we want to do it on the fly. Once that is done, we want to copy a conf file that we have locally into the Nginx container. Now, what's the conf file? That nothing much for now. It's pretty basic configuration file. You can see here that it listens to every Nginx. People who have used Nginx know that you can define all your configurations in this conf file. Again, let's not get into the details of this conf file, but you need a conf file with a valid configuration to be sitting inside Nginx in this location, etc nginx nginx.conf. We do that. Sorry, default.conf. It needs to sit on etc nginx conf.d followed by default.conf. Yep, done. And then we don't want the root Docker file to be written as a root. We want it to be a non-root container, and hence we are setting the user to not a root user. Right. This is pretty much it. The basics of um, what our Docker file is. Now that we have the Docker file, let's go to our Ubuntu machine and ls. There are two things that I need. I need the Docker file and I need the default.conf. Now we are good to go ahead and build this Docker file, thereby creating an image out of it. So the command to do that is, or even before that, first let's try some basic commands. As I said, Docker images gives you all of the images that have been built or that is sitting on this machine. Right now, there is just one image. Otherwise, there is nothing much. Next, Docker PS gives you the different containers that are running in this machine. Image is different and a container is different. Image is just a static image, but container is what you spin up out of an image. There could be that there is image sitting, but then the container is not running yet. So Docker PS helps you to give the list of containers. You can see there is this image and there is also a container running from this image, and that you get via Docker PS. Right. There is one thing called, let's say you want to look for some image. You want to play with Tomcat, Ansible, whatnot, or SonarQube, whatever, and you want to check if an official open source image is available in the docker.io. To do that, you just type docker search, and then let's say you give Ansible. It goes and then looks for an Ansible image in docker.io. In fact, it also gives you some stars saying that which has been validated by people, so that you know that, okay, this is a pretty good image to pull and then start using it. So these are some of the commands that we use in our day-to-day life. Now let's get started. Let's go ahead and build our image from the Docker file. To do that, this is the command: docker build -t, and you give a name for your image. I would give my nginx image and context. Context is basically location where your Docker file is sitting. Not necessary that it needs to just sit in the current directory. It can also sit in a recursive other directory. In that case, you just need to give the flag -f and then provide the complete path of where the Docker file is sitting. Let's go ahead and build. You can see as it builds, it loads each of the layer, it runs each of the layer. As long as it doesn't break, it means that it has built clean. All of the layers and the commands have executed clean. Now to check if my image is built, I give docker images. Boom, we have my nginx image latest created. You can also create it with versions or tags, something like this. Oops, v1.o docker images. You can see I have two image, but one is tagged latest, the other one is tagged with the version v1.o. Good. Now, let's go ahead and deploy it, see the application, and then come back and then play around with this image with the container and try out the other commands. Now that I have the image with me, I want to go ahead and deploy this image in this local machine to see the application on my local browser. So if you see currently my local browser, I give localhost 8080, there's nothing that is running. it says the site cannot be reached. But in a few minutes, we will have the Nginx homepage hosted on localhost 8080. To do that, I give docker run. This is where I am spinning up a container from an image. Right now, just the image is created. If I give docker ps, you can see there is only one image, which is the default image for the Minikube. You can see here Minikube. Otherwise, there is no other container that is running currently. But now we are going to run a container from the image we just built. So let's docker run -p -d 8080. Right. Quickly, docker run is the command to run a container from an image. -p is to publish the application to a port. We in the Docker file we would have exposed it to 8080. Also, while publishing, we want to give the same port. So basically, you map the ports 8080 to 8080, and then -d is basically detached. I will tell you what detached is. Let's hit on this. And followed by your image name. My Nginx image latest. Both are pretty much the same. The version 1.0 and latest are same. So let's go ahead and give this, and then can't be the other way around. So let's put the -d first, followed by the -p. Right. Now, if I go ahead and give docker ps to see if there are any containers that got spinned up, you can see there is this new container called mystifying Yoliot spinned up from the image my Nginx image latest, which is now published to ports 8080. This name we did not give. If you can also give, you can use the argument -t to give a specific name to your container. If you don't do so, just like we did, Docker in itself come up with some random name for your container like mystifying Yoliot, and the container is now running. Which means if I go to my browser and then hit refresh, boom, welcome to Nginx is hosted on port 8080. Perfect. Now, let's try around the few other commands that we would need in our day-to-day life. Now, I want to uh, jump into this container and see if the configurations are uh, looking clean. As in, before even deploying it, I want to see if the conf file got updated within the container correctly. And also, we wanted to do this user. Instead of the user block, we want to comment out a user block. Has that also happened clean? How do I check? To do that, you have to exec into a running container or jump into a running container. So docker exec -it interactive into the container mystifying Yoliot space sh. You need a shell prompt to get into the container and then see how things are looking inside the container. Now you can see that the prompt, you see a prompt, which means we have jumped into the mystifying Yoliot container. ls some root path with some files. I'm not worried about that. I'm basically want to check if two things. If default.conf exists in the path etc nginx default.conf. So I etc conf.d oops nginx etc nginx conf.d ls default.conf cat. It's the same configuration that we had in our local. And even more so, let's check if the etc nginx.conf has a commented out user is etc nginx. So let's cd etc nginx ls. There is a conf.d. We want to look into nginx conf. Let's do a cat. So there should, boom, you see the user nginx is commented out just as we wanted it to be. So this way you can confirm that things have happened clean and the image is built correctly with the instructions that we defined in the Dockerfile. To come out of the container to your actual Ubuntu prompt, just do an exit. Back you are into your Ubuntu machine. Now I want to stop this container. What do I do? As the name says, Docker stop, and I give the name of the container, stopped, Docker PS, boom. You only see one container, the default Minikube container, but the other one, mystifying yo is not there. Uh, let's again run it with this command, but instead of -d detached, if I give -i interactive, it starts the container and it actually runs through the logs, so it doesn't exit out. It's an interactive way of starting the container, and it is not in detached mode, so you cannot run any other command. It is actually in an interactive state. If you go back here and then hit, it is still working because the container started. It's just that it's in the interactive. So you see here, the moment I hit a refresh, it was able to exchange packets, and then you can see that getting updated in the login here. So this is an interactive way of starting the container. I give a control C to exit. And now if I give Docker PS, the container won't be there because it was interactive mode. The moment I exit out, the container is also shut down and it's not running in the background. Only if you use -d, it keeps running in the background. That is something we see. Okay, now let's say I want to uh, delete an image. There are two images of Nginx. I'm happy with the version 1.0. I don't want the latest. How do I delete it? Docker RMI. Maybe it will throw an error and I can explain that. So yes, latest. Oh, it's deleted. Sometimes if the container is running or if there is a cache, then it won't allow you to delete an image. It would first ask you to stop the container and then delete the image, or it asks you to force delete. To do force delete, it's just docker rmi -f and then the image name. Yep. So that's it. Right. Now let's take it a little more interesting. How do we push? Let's say my image is ready. I've deployed it. I've tested it. Looks clean. I want this image to be pushed to DockerHub, a registry. That's how your CI/CD process is. Basically, you build an image, you tag it, you push it to your registry, and then that marks your completion of CI. Then for CD, you pull the image that you tagged from the container registry, you pull it, and then deploy it into your Kubernetes environment. We are going to make a video on that, so stay tuned, watch out for this channel, this space, to know more about Docker and Kubernetes and stuff. But for now, let's tag this image and push to a registry. This process is pretty much the same for any registry that you use. Now, Docker image, we have my Nginx image. Now, which registry do we want to push it to? For demo purpose, we are going to use DockerHub. Now, first things first, you need to do a Docker login and establish a successful connection with the registry. Docker login command is basically the command that will help you to connect to the registry that you want to. So I give docker login -u, and the username for my Docker Hub is this. Now I haven't specified which Docker registry. It could be GCR, or it could be Azure registry, or it could be the Quay or Red Hat, anything. But how does Docker know that I need to connect to docker.io? By default, if you give Docker login, Docker will connect you to Docker Hub. If you want to connect to your specific registry, then you need to ensure that you give the entire URL of the registry, and only then it will connect you to that specific registry. Right, I give the password now. It should say login succeeded. All right, don't worry about the warning. Login succeeded. Again, this is not the ideal way that you would do in production. There are multiple different ways. This is just to keep you give you an understanding about the process workflow. Right, now I'm succeeded, which means now I'm talking or interacting to Docker Hub registry. To push an image to Docker Hub, I first have to tag it, because if I go to Docker Hub and if I go to repositories, there are multiple repositories that I have. Now this is an Nginx image. The last Nginx image I built was probably an year back. Now I want to push a new version of Nginx image to this repository, or I can also create another new repository and then push it there. But just let's use an existing registry. So far we've had what version? 0 dot something. Let's look all. Just want to make sure we don't have a conflict. Yeah, all of it is 0 dot something. But today we have a version, new version v1.o. But before that, I want to tag or change the name of my image corresponding to the DockerHub repository, and only then the push will work. So how should it look like? It should look something like this. So what I do is I come back, Docker tag, existing image name, my Nginx image, version v1.o should get renamed this way as v1.o. Docker images, you see my existing image and then the retagged image here as well. If I'm good, so I just need to do docker push followed by the image name and the tag colon v1.o, enter. Boom. I go back to DockerHub, hit on a refresh, and I should see version 1.0 sitting in here. Perfect, which just got pushed a few seconds ago. If I come back, let's do something interesting. Let's delete all of the Docker images that I have pertaining to Nginx -f, my Nginx image, and the other my Nginx image latest. No, this is the one, and the other one is SK16. Let's delete both. So if I give Docker images, I have nothing but the Minikube image alone. Now I want to push my image from DockerHub and then deploy it into the machine. That's how your CD works. Your CD pipeline will go to your registry, pull the image and the version that you want, and deploy it into the environment that you have. So I go to my browser, I hit a refresh. Since nothing is deployed, it should go back to unable to connect as expected. Now I want to pull this image. Let's copy this command, come here, boom. Docker images, the image is back. And if I use, oops. So it's not this image right now. It's called SK16 Nginx v1.o. Boom. I go here, refresh, Nginx is back. All right. Before I wind up, let me quickly check my cheat sheet. You can also pause the video at this point and then make a note of all the basic Docker commands that you need to get yourself started. So we saw images, ps, stop, RMI, search, pull, login, push, tag, build, run, pretty much everything. There is Docker inspect that we as a final icing on the cake. So I have a container running, which we just spinned up. So if I go Docker PS, yes, there is this. Oh, this time it's called Dazzling Meitner, right? So we have Dazzling Meitner now running, but I want to check how things are. Basically, you use this inspect to see if things are not going clean. If your container doesn't start clean and it fails for some reason, then you want to find out what's happening with the container, and to check that you use inspect. So let's use Docker inspect and the name of the container to see what information it gives. A lot of information. What's the image, the SHA of the image, what's the status, it's running, all good, process ID. There should be something called as, okay, have you mounted any volumes? Have you set the restart policy? Which ports are tied? And much more, much more. Yeah. This comes in handy, especially when things are not going clean and your container has issues starting, or if it gets restarted multiple times, or if you get some errors like image pull back off or error pulling image and so on, then you use inspect to inspect what's happening with the image. All right. With that, we have come to the end of today's video. I hope you all understood and have some takeaways from the session. Meet you all in another session. Until then, thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.